Hi, let's have a look at the modes of the data encryption standard. So we learned that the data encryption standard works on 64-bit block, and the key size for encryption is 56 bits, and it has an 8-bit parity that makes it 64-bit as a key for the data encryption standard. But again, parity was a requirement at that particular time. So the algorithms that were evaluated for becoming a data encryption standard had a requirement for parity as a part of the RFC. And the data encryption standard was chosen from Lucifer. Lucifer was an IBM's algorithm, and it works on the Fiestal network. Okay, Fiestal Cipher, not Fiestal network, Fiestal Cipher basically. Now there are 64-bit blocks. So ATTA. Okay, let's say the most common example that we take for the cryptography is attack at the dawn. Okay, so ATTA, if the key size is 4, ATTA becomes 16 multiplied by 4 because one alphabet is 16 bits. That is 64 bits. 64-bit is actually a block size for the DES. If it's ATTACKAT, attack at the dawn, okay, if it's going to be ATTACKAT, THEDAWNZ, Z is actually a padding. Okay, if this is going to be this one block in data encryption standard, there's another block in data encryption standard, there's a third block in data encryption standard, and there's a fourth block in data encryption standard. Okay, so depending upon the input text size, these many blocks will be added. Now, how these blocks are added, okay, and how are they processed? Are they processed parallelly? Are they processed sequentially? Okay, is there a chaining involved? There's no chaining involved. Is there an initialization vector involved, or there is no initialization vector involved? Okay, this decides the mode of the data encryption standard. The first mode that we want to have a look at on the data encryption standard is electronic code book. Okay, so electronic code book looks like this. Plain text is fed as an input to the algorithm. The other input to the algorithm is the cryptography key or crypto variable. Output is the cipher text. If you actually look at this particular picture, okay, because one picture is equivalent to 1,000 words. Okay, so if you understand these diagrams for the 5 modes, it's easy for you to understand the modes of the data encryption standard. Now, the plain text is fed as an input to the cryptography algorithm, and the other input is the key, and output is the cipher text. There is no difference. There is no chaining between one block and another block. So this means there are 364-bit blocks here: ATTA, CKAT, THED. Okay, as per the example that we actually took. So there is no link between one block and another. So the plain text that you feed to the first block is, if it's going to be ATTA, output is something, okay? And if the same input is fed to the next block, the output will be the same as the first block. So ATTA, 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 and all the 3 blocks will give an output which is same. Okay, the ciphertext will be same. So this is electronic code book. And because of this, okay, it's all obviously it's useful for encrypting only a small inputs. For example, your debit card or credit card PIN number, which is only 4 characters, sometimes 6 characters, depending upon whom you bank with. Yeah, so these PIN number, which is going to be 4 characters, can be encrypted. Okay, and we can use the electronic code book. Now let's look at the next one, cipher block chaining. It's actually called this. If you look at the diagram, the plain text XORed with the initialization vector, and that is fed as an input to the algorithm. The other input to the algorithm is the key, and output is the ciphertext. And ciphertext is actually copied and made as an initialization vector for the next block. So if you look at the next block, there is no IV directly. IV is fed as an input only for the first block. So the copy of the ciphertext is fed as an input to the next block, subsequent blocks basically. So copy of the ciphertext from the previous block is fed as an input to subsequent blocks, and it's XOR to the plain text, and it goes as an input to the algorithm. Okay, plain text XOR to the IV is fed as an input to the algorithm. Other input is the key, and you get the ciphertext. And the copy of the ciphertext is taken to the next block. It's XOR to the plain text again instead of initialization vector. That is also fed as an input to the algorithm. The other input is the key, and then you get the ciphertext. Because IV in the first block need not be same as the cipher text. Okay, it usually it's not. Okay, cipher text. So the output of the output of the second block is not same as the first block, not like electronic code book. Okay, it's different. Okay. Now, this is cipher block chaining because each and every block has got a chain from the previous block where the cipher text is fed as an input. Okay, let's look at the cipher feedback mode. Now, if you look at this particular picture, okay, you will not actually have, the plain text is fed as an input to the block. So initialization vector is fed as an input to the block where the other input is the key. Output is XORed with the plain text. Now, if we take the copy of the cipher text, once the output is XORed to the plain text, you get the cipher text. Once you take the copy to the next block, after the cipher text is produced, we call that a cipher feedback mode. Remember, IV and the key is fed as an input to the algorithm, and output is just XOR to the plain text, then you get cipher text. Now I'm taking a copy of the cipher text to the next block. Okay, so this is actually called a cipher feedback mode. If the copy to the next block is taken before the XOR to the plain text, before the XOR to the plain text, okay, below this particular block diagram, you don't get the cipher text at all. Okay, it's just an output. Cipher text is produced only when the plain text is converted, not anything else is converted. So the initialization vector on the key is fed as an input to the encryption algorithm. At this particular stage, just below the block, we just call that as an output, which is XOR with the plain text to produce the cipher text. So if I'm going to take a copy to the next block, after it is XOR, it is called a cipher feedback mode. Before it is XOR, it is actually called as output feedback mode. See, look here. IV plus key is giving me an output. Now, output is taken as an input to the next block. Okay, so it's actually called as an output feedback mode. Now, if you look at the last mode called counter mode, okay, there's no chaining involved here. So one block, block 1, block 2, and block 3. So if you look at the top, there is a number ones, nones, and the counter is 0. For the next block, counter is 1, then becomes 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. As fed as an input, and the other input is the key, and output is XOR with the plain text to give you cipher text. Now, cipher text of the block 1, 2, 3 will not be the same, even if the input is same, because there's a difference in the counter. So the counter, okay, or the number ones which is fed as an input to the algorithm is not same. So the output of the cryptographic encryption is also not same out of the block. And after it gets XOR to the plain text, the output is not same. Even the plain text is ATTA, 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 the output will not be same because there's a difference in the number ones. So in the examination, if they're going to give you a picture and ask you what mode of DES it is, okay, see whether there's a chaining or there's no chaining. If there's no chaining, it should be electronic codebook or counter mode. Okay, in the counter mode, there is a nonce. Okay, in electronic codebook, there's nothing. Okay, electronic codebook, we have only the plain text and the key. There is no salt or initialization vector or nonce or number ones, nothing. So if there is no nonce, we can call that as an, we know it's an electronic codebook. If it's going to be a nonce here, we know it's going to be the counter mode. Okay, now there is a chaining involved. If there's a chaining involved, then you see whether the plain text is fed as an input to the algorithm in any form. Here it is XOR, but still it's fed as an input to the algorithm. If it is fed as an input to the algorithm, it's going to be cipher block chaining. Okay, now input is not fed as an input to the algorithm. That means it should be either cipher feedback mode or output feedback mode. Now look at below the block. If below the block, okay, after the XOR, if the copy is taken to the next block, it is called as a cipher feedback mode because plain text is converted to the cipher text here. If it's going to be before the XOR, it is just an output. Okay, there's no cipher yet, so it's called the output feedback mode. So look at the picture. There's no chaining or there is chaining. If there is a chaining involved, it has to be cipher block chaining or cipher feedback mode or output feedback mode. If the plain text is fed as an input to the algorithm after getting XORed, okay, so we call that as a cipher block chaining. If the plain text is not fed as an input to the algorithm, we have to look below the block, encryption block, okay? And if it's after the XOR, we take the copy to the next block, we call the cipher feedback mode. Before the XOR, we call it output feedback mode. Okay. Now, there's no chaining here. If the plain text is fed as an input to the algorithm, it's electronic codebook. If the plain text is not fed as an input to the algorithm, it is in counter mode. So these are the 5 modes of data encryption standard. And these 5 modes also exist in AES, but that is not a part of your CISSP syllabus. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to my channel for the further tutorials on CISSP, Certified Advanced Security Practitioner, Cloud Security, Penetration Testing, etc. Thank you very much and happy learning to you all. Thank you.